The way we consume and share news today, it is largely rooted in social media outlets, a reason why it's crucial to look at what's being discussed online. For the hottest issues and trends, we're now joined by Erica for Social Media Minute. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Boxing Day.
Happy Boxing Day.
Adam reminded me it doesn't really affect me, but apparently it is Boxing Day in different parts of the world.
Do you have a Christmas tree up in your house?
Of course. I intend to keep it up until, do you think pushing to like the last week of January is too much?
No, you're just like my mom. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The previous generation, they're wise, so I'll take their advice. All right. Let's jump into some of these buzzwords this morning. Now, when you put it in this kind of headline, it just makes you do a double take because for the most part, strollers are designed for babies, but apparently in Korea, as we speak, more strollers are being sold for pet companions rather than infants.
Yeah. What does that tell you about,
fertility rates?
Fertility rates. We continue to talk about it, and we're not stopping anytime soon. But this is perhaps another sign of South Korea's declining number of births. South Korea's largest online marketplace reported that sales of pet strollers exceeded those of baby strollers for the first time this year. According to Gmarket, the total strollers sold on the platform during the first 3 quarters of this year, those for pets accounted for 57%, while strollers for babies, human babies, made up the remaining 43%.
You know, Erica, we've been talking about birth rates for as long as I've been on this show, even before I hosted for, I'm assuming, a decade. So I do wonder, how do numbers compare to maybe previous years? Is this a noticeable change?
Yes. Let's first compare the numbers. Baby carriages previously had a larger share in both years, in 2021 and last year. Back in 2021, baby carriages took up 67% of the share, while last year it took up 64% of the share. Now, pet carriages, in the meantime, made up 33% of total sales back in 2021 and 36% last year.
So it's been on a steady incline, to say the least. Have increased purchases of pet-related items, maybe alongside declining sales of baby-related products, been a continuous trend?
Yes, it has. According to a Gmarket official, this has been an ongoing trend, but now we're seeing it, we're seeing it more. And now the pet-related items are taking up a larger share compared to baby-related products. Now, this Gmarket official did acknowledge that the significant shifts in market share observed in 2023 this year do warrant further study in order to understand the underlying causes.
There are many moving parts, right? It's not just one factor, but we can make some guesses in the dark. One of our listeners said one of our radio DJs, Isak, bought a stroller for her puppy dog, Luffy. I met Luffy when he was a puppy. It's been a long time. And he loves it, apparently. She doesn't have a beagle. She has a bichon frise, and my beagle would hate the stroller.
I was just going to ask you if you actually have a stroller for Bagel.
I wish I could show our listeners just how big my beagle is. I don't know what
Doesn't fit?
No, and he would hate it. I think even when he's immobile, he would want me to like walk him, like so he can sniff the ground. But to each their own. I understand why it's popular, and the lap dogs really love the strollers, apparently. So, of course, all of this focus on pets, pet adoption, and ensuring that your pets have a really fulfilling good life until the very end. It's not news, I suppose, but it is a stark contrast to the fertility rate we just talked about.
Yes, that's right. Our listeners are probably familiar with the numbers by now because we talk about it so much.
Mm-hmm.
According to Statistics Korea, the total fertility rate in South Korea dropped from 1.48 in 2000 to 0.78 last year over the course of 23 years. That's how much South Korea's fertility rate has fallen. The office is anticipating a further drop, in fact, in the total fertility rate to 0.68 next year. The number of newborns has also seen a decrease, obviously. It has dropped from 640,000 in 2000 to 250,000 last year. So, on the contra, on the flip side, the number of households raising pets is growing. Recent stats from the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs show that over 25% of Koreans now have pets.
All right, there you have it. Let's move on to our second buzzword of the day
Mm-hmm.
because he has cleared his name and we talked about
Yep.
it briefly in our culture segment, but it raised a pretty big red flag. Are we a little bit hasty in judging the innocent until they're proven guilty? Now, G Dragon has donated 300 million won to create a foundation to fight drug abuse.
That's right. So this was all over the news yesterday. G Dragon has pledged to donate 300 million won, which is roughly 230,000 US dollars, to set up a foundation to fight against drug abuse here in South Korea, which is becoming a growing concern. Now, according to his agency, G Dragon named the Anti Drug Foundation Just Peace Foundation, a word that combines justice and peace.
I think peace is kind of a recurring theme in the G Dragon branding, right? But I
Yeah,
think
true.
highlighting justice maybe
Hmm.
sheds light on how he felt throughout the investigation process and the allegations against him. The donation comes as a singer-songwriter was cleared of drug allegations this month. What made him actually decide to actively get involved in South Korea's fight against drug abuse?
He conveyed through his agency last week that there are nearly 20,000 people convicted of drug related crimes every
Mm.
year. And among them, the number of teenagers,
Ah.
especially, is on the rise dramatically, in fact. And the artist said he learned that fewer than 500 people have access to proper treatments in medical institutions. And this sort of like dismal situation made him realize that it's time to act on the
Mm.
matter because he wants to be a responsible member of our society. Now, the foundation's first project, therefore, is to help deal with teenage drug addiction. You mentioned, back in October, suspicions were raised that G Dragon had used drugs at a bar in Seoul. Last December, the police launched into investigation into these allegations, but they were, unable to corroborate them,
Mm.
and they closed the case earlier this month. His name was cleared.
If you really want to talk about turning a really bad situation and turning it around, I think G Dragon takes the cake. I mean, it
Yeah,
must have been so difficult to take those accusations and some of the things that were said online. It was as if he was already convicted.
that's right.
And he also gave everyone kind of a grace period of a week to bring down some of those articles and
Yep.
hasty comments, right? Instead of just
Hmm.
filing lawsuits. To be a bigger man in this situation, I bet you it takes all the strength in the world.
Yep. Yep.
All right, we'll leave it there. So we can move on to our final buzzword of the day. Tourists, be aware, artists, in quotes, rip off tours with botch portraits.
Yeah. So here's an interesting story that I found in the realm of social media. A 30-year-old American traveler, her name is Megan. She was in Paris recently and she was enjoying coffee and some desserts in the art quarter in Montmartre in Paris. And this man approached her, said, "Oh, you're so beautiful. Can I sketch you? Can I draw a portrait of you?" And she said, "Sure." And, he did. It took about 15 minutes for him to finish the portrait. And then after he was finished, he asked her to pay him 120 euros, which is roughly 170,000 won for the drawing. So this is supposed to be a portrait, right? Which means it's supposed to resemble her.
Yeah.
But Megan, she found it neither resembling her nor flattering. She said her eyes especially seemed really distorted.
Do you
So she said,
think this
mhm.
artist was channeling Picasso?
Oh gosh, I don't think so.
I don't think anyone should channel Picasso.
I know you're making a joke there, but so she said, you know what, that's a little bit too much what you're asking for.
Yeah.
But he insisted that she pay, and when she told him that she didn't have any cash on her, he kindly escorted her to a nearby ATM so she could withdraw some cash from her bank account. Now, Megan said in a news interview recently that she thinks this happened because she was alone. She was probably approachable, and she didn't really negotiate the price before she said yes. And she said she should have been more cautious. And on Sunday, the French daily newspaper, Le Parisien, issued a cautionary warning. And it basically warned tourists of these types of art fraud that are happening increasingly in Montmartre in Paris.
And Montmartre is, I think, one of the just most famous tourist destinations. It's beautiful, it's fun, it's lively, and there are a lot of artists that have shopped to draw you a portrait or otherwise. The area has attracted famous painters like Pablo Picasso, Vincent van Gogh, and Modigliani, and the list really does go on. The fact that it is such a big tourist attraction, I guess it makes sense that such fraud happens in this area.
Yeah, so what I want the listeners to take away from this story is that, caricature and portrait artists in Paris are required to obtain government approval to work in Montmartre. They pay an annual fee of around $350 to actually sit there and paint. But in reality, many of these artists are operating illegally, and they often charge exorbitant fees for really subpar, portraits. And the maximum fee licensed artists charge their clients is around 60 euros.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. If they ask for more than 100, you should get a little bit suspicious.
Okay, that's your marker, 60 euros.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Erica. We'll see you tomorrow.
Pleasure. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.